Good morning, everyone. Like Ankita said, very excited to bring this episode of Speciale Talks to you, the first in 2024. We've had a little bit of a break, but this one we're doing after a while, and that's even more exciting to have Venkat Pingali, co-founder at Scribble Data, to have us join here and share his thoughts and experiences, not just of building Scribble Data, but in general about the ecosystem, about ways of building business. They have some very interesting views and very different approaches to what they have been doing and what they continue to do in what is a very exciting and fast moving landscape. So there's lots to learn in today's episode and unravel. So we'll dive right into it. Venkat, good morning and thanks for joining.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Of course, we've been talking for a while, but this is a much more formal version of it.
Yes.
Anything that I can share that would help the community is my pleasure.
Much appreciated. Much appreciated. Maybe start with, giving a little background about yourself and how you've arrived at building Scribble Data. I think you've done interesting things in your career,
Yes.
and that itself will be good setting of context.
No, yeah. I think I have definitely meandered in my journey over a long period of time. Of course, like all good boys do, went to school, got some good grades, and went to IIT and so on. But I think the most interesting thing that happened at IIT, interestingly, it wasn't the courses. It was a blur, like 12 hours a day of grind over many years. That I didn't see a whole lot of meaning in it, but it kindled a deep interest in me, at least in computing as a space. For the before IIT, probably played one game for like 20 minutes, right? That is it. Like, and then the next thing that you know is you are doing a computer science degree, and half the time you have no idea what is going on. Like, you're talking a lot about B trees and about compiler optimization and four color theorems and parallel algorithms, all of those kinds of things. But I think the most interesting thing that happened was that it created this deep interest in computing overall. So what I decided to do, again, one of my although I came from the countryside and so on, I had many original ideas of myself, right? And I wasn't looking for folks to tell me which way to go. One of the things I did was I didn't immediately jump over to the US and master's PhD, the usual thing that IIT kids do, and decided to take 2-3 years off to study computing. And I would spend every day like 3 to 4 hours going to my IIT library. I took a lifetime membership, like started going there for the first time and poring over the history of computing, and it became more and more fascinating with every passing day. So by the time I went to school, my grad school, I tell you, that was an interesting episode in itself. I was actually fairly well versed with almost like 50 years of research that was done in systems. My interest was all systems. Like, how do you make these things? I didn't get too carried away, interestingly, with the algorithms. That didn't have as much meaning for me. So for the first time, I got to go to my grad school, work in a processor design group. That still informs me today, that experience. And then after that, I had an even more interesting experience in my PhD. So I once I did my PhD, I came back. I went in as a computer scientist into my PhD. I came out as an entrepreneur, and that 6, 7, 8, 9 years, I spent a lot of time thinking about systems, products, how things happen in this world, and from there onwards, I've pretty much been an entrepreneur. Of course, right. Cut out for a lot more of academics than entrepreneurs, but I find a lot of overlap in thinking between entrepreneurship and research. But I want to dive in on one very interesting experience that is actually relevant to this era, like 2024, right? So can I go ahead?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Please.
So in my PhD, I had this opportunity to work with who's who of the internet. So what had happened was that DARPA had put this team together of people from Berkeley, MIT, Stanford, all of these places, got them into a room and said, okay, now that this was around 2001-2 time frame. They said that, okay, we're done building the first internet. What should the next internet look like? And I was this lowly graduate student. At that time, there was no Fireflies to record all of these meetings and automatically summarize. I was the Fireflies of that era. My job was to only not keep my mouth shut because this was above my pay grade, and really jot down whatever they have discussed, if you will. And interestingly, although these are all high-powered individuals, I was feeling deep discomfort. It was a year-long activity, and I felt that the whole conversation was off. And I couldn't put my finger on why it was off. And it took me another few years to understand what had happened. And this is necessary to understand the current era also. These were the people who put the internet together. They were the people who worked out the various protocols, the routing, and everything. They built it from scratch. But I think what happens is that in exponential systems and technologies, right, our experience is too limited to understand the emergent properties of very large scale systems like the internet. They knew when there were like 5 nodes in the internet. And by the time I came into the picture, there were already like 1 billion people on the internet or something of that order. So for me, it was already a large scale system, and the way I thought about it was very different. And these people could see the network growing, and their ideas were stuck in the 80s. And their real problem was that in the new world, their mental models to understand what was happening in the internet around 2001 to itself was not enough. And they were more and more sidelined with every passing day. It was a mix of ego issues. It was a mix of technical understanding of the issues and so on. And my reading was correct that they were not framing the problems correctly. What was happening in 2002, 3 around the internet. And the relevance for today is that if you thought that the internet was a big thing, data and AI and so on are even bigger, in my opinion, because they operate in the information space as opposed to a network space. And this has many of the same properties, which is it is exponential in nature. So the biggest challenge, in my opinion, that's the some of the greatest minds of that era had faced, and we are also facing every single day, which is that we are a prisoner of our experience. We think of linear evolution of the world, and we don't understand emergence. And what happens when the scale increases so large that it seems to that the technology has almost seems to have a mind of its own. And the challenge for us is to think a lot more deeply about all of this. And for me, emergence was very apparent, even though I didn't have the language to discuss about it. Emergence was very apparent, and that was a source of my discomfort, right? And you are trying to be God for a system that doesn't want any gods, right? And so my research actually took me down the path of how do you understand change in these very, very complex systems, and how do you shape it up in a way that it can be directed in a purposeful towards a particular goal. And naturally it took me towards complex adaptive systems in physics it turns out that many other people have thought about this. We are not the only ones, and it goes back to 1900s when people were thinking about transportation, when people were building F-16s, or when people were thinking about biological evolution. Every one of these domains had notions of complexity, notions of change, and constructs to think about them. The one that appealed to me most was actually came from economics, both from network economics and the options theory, which is mostly about risk management and so on. So imagine you had a power plant. The problem is today you build the power plant for coal. And what if the price of coal suddenly increases, right? 5 years from now, after you have made this massive investment. So the options theory came about to figure out what is the right way to create optionality n years from now, so that imagine paying 10% extra in terms of complexity and cost of the power plant. That gives you the option of switching to naphtha 5 years from now. So there was this entire math around all of this that deeply appealed to me. And of course, like, yeah, I develop it further in terms of notions of time and recursion and all of those nice academic things that we were supposed to do, partly to sound smart. And I remember my advisor was one of those stalwarts in this whole design of the internet business. And I remember showing him my dissertation. He had gone off for a couple of years and then came back, and the first thing that he sees is my draft of this like complicated document that I have written with. And the only thing he finds is references to economics, architecture, like, complex systems, cybernetics, and whatnot. And he doesn't find any references to systems paper or the standard OS and networks conferences and so on. So he's shocked. And I said, uh, uh, you know, I can remove them if you want, but that doesn't change my ideas about what I think is the problem and what needs to be done. So he used pretty strong language, like, he said, this is all fluffy nonsense, fit for management school, not for a computer science PCs and so on. And but I think till today I can tell you that the ideas have stood strong at some level. The domain that he was working on largely became irrelevant because it did not rise up to the challenges of that particular time and build up, reinvent themselves, rethink the constructs that they grew up with. And I worry that a lot of the technology folks today are going to face the same issues, which is that all the experiences that they have with respect to databases, with respect to all the systems, infrastructure, applications, and so on, they have to rethink them in the presence of a super smart service that is available to you at low cost, infinite capacity, right? I think this is the first time where it is, this is definitely a test of all of our, like, self-awareness, smarts, and so on. If you think about the Industrial Revolution, right? We couldn't walk fast enough, so we got vehicles. We couldn't lift enough, so we got cranes. We couldn't power the fans, so we got the electricity and all the equipment around it. Everything was around augmenting our physical limitations. For the first time, we have a situation where we can create a mental exoskeleton for ourselves, where we are able to think 10x deeper, 10x faster, 10x, richer. For example, today, how do we decide which school do we want to send our kid to? We ask our neighbors and folks around us, right? It's a sampling that we do around. Now, what if we have a data set that captures the experience of every kid in every school in the city or in your neighborhood, and data will pretty much tell us, right? A lot of the very obvious things about learning levels, about culture of the school, things that are happening well and not happening well, and so on, right? That the amount of knowledge and history that is in all of this data is way more than anecdotal evidence that you can get from your neighbors or your friends and so on. And so that means that the choice of deciding where to put your kid into school, we will interrogate this knowledge base for ourselves, right? Now, we never had that situation. So what this will lead to is truly today schools brand themselves. We are an international school, we have this fancy school, and they're able to charge, they're able to position themselves a certain way. They're depending a lot on brand to do the signaling. Now, some of this sensors will cut through a lot of it and say there is this interesting new school which doesn't have as much visibility, but maybe it is like very, very interesting because the numbers say tell us a lot about what is happening. So this, I think of this as exoskeleton, which is like we will become like superhumans at some level. And so of late, very interestingly, I've never been a fiction guy. I've never been a movie guy. For me, non-fiction is everything. Right? You can see, right? But of late, I've been watching these science fiction movies because that is not a world that we know of, right? That deep transparency and deep intelligence. Now the question is, what do we do with it? And we are in this intermediate period where we are the same old humans, and then we are going to transition into a much more empowered human kind of a society, and it's a very confusing state right now. Right, I go back to the time around 1900. For some of my research, I was poring over literature from the 1900s. And at that time, when cars initially came, they didn't know what to call them. So they called them horseless carts. That means these are like carts, except that I didn't know, I just can't find the horses in them. So let's call them horseless carts. And then that went on for some more time, and they thought that it was too like weird to call them carts. So they called them roundabouts. It will go round and round, right? We are in this horseless cart era where we are transitioning from the old ways of thinking and deciding and so on to a much more sophisticated way. But we are in the middle of that process. And what my recommendation to the community overall is that in this exponential era, we have to leave behind our past and imagine more and more radical future and go towards that, and not look for relatively linear games. It is now possible today. We are a very, very small company. We with our resources, we are able to do things that were unimaginable 10 years back. I have like multiple Fortune 100 customers, and talking to some of the senior most executives, delivering them transformative ideas, and they think that we can do it. It's not just we doing it. So the flavor of the conversations today is, Venkat, look, this is my thinking over the next 3 years. This is what I want the organization to be. I would like Scribble to help us do that. That is the flavor of conversation that is happening today. And I think that is, it's not so much that we are smart or anything like that. It is really about the opportunities that this era presents to all of us. And so what I would encourage everybody in the community to do is to think non-linearly about the future and take bets that look very unrealistic today, but they may look very mundane like 3 to 5 years, 10 years from now. And that requires us to shed our past, leave the past behind, like with all the failures, all the experiences that we have had, and leverage the opportunities as they are being presented to you in the global market. I think time has never been better.
I think it's an exciting time on so many fronts, and thanks for sharing that background and context. It helps, and to reimagine and for people to think about how you're doing things, which is important. Would love to hear about the genesis of Scribble Data itself, right?
Mm.
Of course, you've done a startup in the past that had its own journey and that had its own experiences, but particularly, the data aspect and the AI aspect of Scribble Data. It's been close to 7 years now. Is that
6, 7 years. Yeah, yeah.
six,
It
seven
has
years
gone
since
through
you started?
evolution.
Yes.
I had a ringside view to all this machine learning,
Yeah,
the
yeah. So you've
evolution
seen a
of it.
lot. So just talk about the trigger, the background for Scribble Data, and of course, for the audience, also specifically elaborate what is Scribble Data all about.
Right. So I'll tell you what we are today, and I'll tell you like what connects it to the past, right? So today, what happens is that the customers, our primary customers are large regulated financial institutions in the US. And what they come to us and say is that, look, our domain is going through a transformation, and we would like to absorb a lot of the technology and reimagine our businesses, right, over the next so much time. And but the issue is that we need a way by which we are able to get on the journey step by step. And these are our customers are in the asset management and insurance. These are very conservative folks by the very nature of the business that they do. They carry a lot of legal and other kinds of burden. They can't make random decisions. But what is interesting is that over the past few years, because of macro conditions and so on, there has been an upheaval in this whole space, and that has given them an opportunity to rethink their business. And they're thinking of their business more like hedge fund than like a traditional insurance company that you call up and you say, where is my what happened to my claim and so on. That has been their business for about 50, 70 years. And going forward, they're thinking more like a asset management company where it is all about routing resources, investing it correctly, having a tech first operation, and also like a hedge fund where a lot of decision making will be automated. This is the vision that they have independently arrived at, and that the ChatGPT moment basically accelerated that whole process, because now they can see a path to it also. It's not enough to have a vision, but they can actually see how to actually execute. So they come to us and say, look, can you this is our workflows. These are complex workflows involving very, very sophisticated and very experienced individuals with a lot of judgment. We cannot get them in the market. Can we figure out how to use AI to extend their capabilities? If they are doing 2 deals, can we do 15 deals, 20 deals a month, if you will? Basically, they are asking us to build AI assistants and agents to assist some of the folks making very serious high risk decisions. So think of it as AI/ML data products, right? Delivered in a very empathetic, very carefully crafted way in a high risk environment, right? So that is what we do. Now, the evolution for this is, after I came back from my postdoc, the first thought was, I was very interested in energy, so I started a energy company. And the idea was, this was around 2012, 2013 time frame, when the idea is to instrument your electric meter and then pull the data into the cloud and do a lot of analysis. Now, what happened during that time was actually fascinating. So I started looking at this Mumbai transportation, the electricity related data, looked at airport electricity data, and so on. What struck me was the amount of understanding that I could get about the nature of the business just by looking at electricity. I don't need anything else from outside. I could talk about how their business was doing, what their hours were, what was the skill levels of the individuals, and so on. So, but of course, I couldn't, that was too early. I couldn't figure out how to make a business out of it. But I continued this. The thread that became very important for us was, for me, was data is embedding a lot of knowledge about the world. Now, the whole question becomes, how do you squeeze value out of it? How do you extract this knowledge out of it? Because it all depends upon, it's a passive entity, right? You just have the electricity recording sitting in some log. Now, how do you understand it and how do you apply it to the real world is where the skill is. So I got the a very interesting opportunity to head the data for Nandan Nilekani's election campaign after that. So I jumped at it and said, okay, this is the first large-scale application. Let me get familiar with this whole tool chain and the process and things like that. And what came out was actually quite counterintuitive. Whereas the rest of the world was pursuing models, it became very apparent to us that data is the central artifact in this whole machine learning. And at that time, AI was not that big. And the reason for that is we were just observing what we were doing, right? We would spend almost 3 weeks reading up the data and 2 days for modeling, right? And the models would come and go. This time we are going to try this model. Tomorrow we're going to try some other model. But it is the same artifact of data on which we were trying all of this. So it's only after like 5 years that Andrew Ng says, it is data-centric AI. For us, it was like, duh, it was always the case. If you had observed where the time and effort was going, it was not our own unique experience. It is the experience of everybody. I think what happens as a community, which I saw as a problem, which we have to really address, is that we get carried away by the latest and the greatest of the day. The shiny object of the day was model. Every day was saying, everybody would come and say like XG boost, whereas I would keep droning about data quality and how like in 90% of my problems that I find in the model eventually end up in the data because I dropped some records, I assumed some defaults, I transformed it the wrong way. There was a bug in the 90% of the code was there, 90% of the time was being spent on the data. That is where the bugs are going to be, right? That is where that was very obvious to me, but it was running counter to where the community was. So before DVC is one of the data versioning system is a fairly well-known top 10 GitHub kind of repository. We built DVC 1 year before DVC itself did, right? And then I gave a talk at Fifth Elephant on the data, Git for data. And because for me, the data was the central artifact, and the attributes that we need to get a handle on is trust, relevance, auditability, usability, and all of these kinds of things. So for that, versioning of this data became very important. The process became very important. And so I remember that I gave a talk to almost 400 folks, and exactly like 3 folks came and talked to me about it. And that too, they were interested in just 1 or 2 techniques. They were not interested in my tooling or anything like that. The reason I shared this is that I think in this technology era, now it is happening for agents and so on. The big lesson that I learned during my PhD and my long years of experience is that we really have to separate out what is transient and what is permanent. What is important and what is interesting. We have to be able to separate them out. The deep value is going to get created from the persistent problems that don't lend themselves to simple or easy solutions. And you have to grapple with it for years and years and years. Today, after all of these years, we are still talking about the same thing: data observability, data quality. All of these were variations of the same thing, which is if we are going to model based on some data artifact, we need to have a trust in the data artifact that we have created. How do we know that we have trust? What is the measures of trust? This is all that something that we are grappling with. So this problem is not going away. And today we are in business. Our customers deal with this, deal with us as opposed to many of the other providers, is that for them, the cost of mistakes is very high. So they want partners who take this task of handling the data very, very seriously with all the due care that needs to happen. So the character is part of what they are looking for, and they found in Scribble, if you will. And my suggestion to the community overall is that there is a lot of drama in the foreground. TechCrunch of the world, the Y Combinator, Hacker News, and so on. The if you are thinking about products, services, companies, and so on, you have to dig deeper and deeper and deeper. And the machine learning, the world, I had a ringside view to the last like 6-7 years of machine learning, right? It was almost like a there was it's a community level hallucination, right? That was going on, in my opinion. Right? Somebody with significant credentials said that this is the truth, and that becomes the truth for everybody. And so let me give you an example of that, right? In 2017, Uber made a big splash with their Michelangelo architecture, right? And they talked about how they were driving the kinds of, something like 5,000 models and some hundreds of these data scientists with their Michelangelo platform. And then everybody and their brothers started building out their version of Michelangelo in their company. And that is what led to eventually the what is called as the best of the breed approach, which is I'm going to take like one sliver of what needs to happen, and then I'm going to implement it. Our experience suggested something else. Our experience suggested that this is going to be enormously complex. It makes sense at Uber scale. The architecture makes complete sense for the context. If you are 3 people organization, it doesn't make sense for you to think of yourself as an Uber. The rules are different, right, for you. And the community blindly copied there were big asterisks next to the Google paper and next to the Uber's presentation. They should have gone to the first principles and applied their mind to the problem that they have in front of us, instead of blindly copying. And a lot of companies got started, and lots of companies also started adopting both the MDS and the MLOps. Both of them were cut from the same cloth and the same set of ideas. If it is right for Google, it should be right for me, right? And come 2022, at the moment there is a crunch, the first set of folks who get fired are all the data scientists, data engineers, all the people who have built this massive infrastructure, because they lost sight of one very important fact, which is that all of this data and the tech is in service of the business. At the end of the day, you have to deliver value, and you can't say that rules don't apply to your function within the organization. The tech has to demonstrate that it is delivering value for the price that it is asking, if you will. And if you start truly considering the TCO of all of this, turns out that most of tech is actually not viable. And eventually the CFOs found that, and that results in a loss of like some $20 billion of investment that has gone into all of these companies, and the many, many years of very, very smart people, because the assumptions were wrong. And I think this, because we as a small company did not have the luxury of like lots of funding, we were bootstrapped, interestingly, during that time. Again, one of the many, many contrarian choices that we made. We thought that we could actually build out some of these things using bootstrapped approach. But what we noticed was a lot of misdirected or misallocated resources, constructs that were not appropriate for various markets. Every market has its own shape, and it has its own assumptions, its own economics, and so on. So when you build products that are misfit, eventually the truth will take over, right? Will prevail. And that is what happened in 2022 and so on. And I see the same thing happening with AI again, which is that a new framework is announced every single day, and everybody says that this is it. Again, this time, unlike the last machine learning cycle, which took about like 5 years to determine the questions of value around all of this, those questions are arriving in the year 2 of AI already, right? If you look at the spate of articles that are being now written, with where AI projects are seeing 95% failure, and the big tech is slowing down the selling of the AI and all of those kinds of things. I think this is all happening because um, we tech is not sufficiently appreciating that they have other stakeholders that they're accountable to. And this time it is happening much faster. In fact, there was this very interesting conversation which we had with a Boston-based insurer with almost 100 people data science team. And they came to the table very, very skeptical. Like, you guys are saying all of these things, it is possible, it's possible, but look at the last 2 rounds of Silicon Valley driven investment that we have had to make, whether it is crypto or whether it is this other thing. And we had loss of faith within our organization. Why do you think that you guys are more legitimate or credible than why are you not part of the same era or the thought process, and so on? And I think that the while value is getting created, you can play the game for a couple of years, maybe 3 years, and so on. Eventually, at the end of the day, the only sustainable business relationships are based on value, in my opinion. You deliver value, and the price is commensurate with the value that you deliver. And that equation has to be maintained. The hardest, the difficulty is that in an exponential era, it is very hard to figure out what is the right what is the right level of pricing or the investment and so on.
It's like he's dropped out. I think
Yeah.
there was an internet issue at his end. Just a second, please.
Yeah. You want
Sorry
to pause?
to break your flow. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no worries.
Okay, no worries. Yeah. It's
Okay.
okay. I'll cut this bit out. Don't worry. Let's go on.
Okay. So
Sorry, I had some network issues. I'm back.
yeah. No, I was just talking about how when we think about deep tech and all of those kinds of things, right? We are getting carried away by the tech, but at the end of the day, business 101 still holds. That has not changed in like thousands of years. And the customers are very rational. We do get carried away by our own language, especially it is very strong in the tech community. We create these constructs and we live in that world. Engineers at the product companies like ours are talking to the engineers at the customer companies, and neither are them talking to the business folks who are being serviced. So, and it struck me as very odd for an academic. If I were to make these rookie mistakes, right, which I did in the past, this is understandable. But as I went down this entrepreneurship path and I started selling to customers and understanding the notions of value and things like that, there was a lot of pushback that I got from from my peers in the tech community. They would say, anytime you talk about value, that means that you don't have a confidence in your product. Or they would say something like, you guys are very far away from the market and therefore you don't know what is the right notion of value and so on. So the thing is that today we are still standing, right? And we have earned the right to be at the customer's table. And I think that is fundamentally because it is not there is a difference between great technology and good use of technology. Business is about good use of technology. This is not about chest thumping about what great things you have done as part of your engineering systems. And so This flows a little bit into our own company's philosophy and our own what we think of as value and so on. The Definitely, I think the community is making mistakes. It's continuing to make mistakes, in my opinion, in this AI era. And of course, there are great things happening in the community as well. But the opportunity at some level is to step back, think carefully about both the technology space as well as the application space, and construct great products which have much more lasting value. Otherwise, it's just wasted energy, right? Look at all the some 600, 700 companies that are about to die in the machine learning space. These are all very, very smart people. I've known them. So the only thing that I find there is their ego got better of them, in my opinion, right? I remember the way they would talk very condescendingly to me, and without asking what is it that led me to define the product the way I did, right? That would have been a useful conversation. And they could still say, no, I don't agree with it, and so on. This God complex in their own ideas and the technology, this is dangerous. Silicon Valley doesn't have a lock on ideas or vision or even the customers, in my opinion. And that is really the opportunity for somebody sitting far away. Being away from the group itself is an advantage that we should take advantage of, and build for deep value propositions that are long lasting, in my opinion.
Makes a lot of sense. I think there's so much insight there. Couple of things I want to double click on. You did mention Scribble's contrarian approach. Two aspects. One is frugality slash bootstrapping early on. I know you raised capital more recently later on, but bootstrapping early on and making that conscious choice. What are the pros and cons of that? Where did that thought process come from? You also had some past experience of having raised capital, etc. So just walk us through what is important while making such decisions and considerations in terms of raising capital or going at it frugally with your own capital.
No, I think absolutely, and these are all very considered decisions for us. Both me and my co-founder are second-time founders, and in both cases, our first company crashed and burnt. And when we were, he was also with me during Nandan's time, and we were like actually exchanging notes during the time, saying how do we actually understand our own past experiences, the failures that we have seen. And what we realized is that the issue was that this idea of easy access to capital makes us lazy, makes us dishonest to ourselves, not to others. What ends up happening is that you start building for your investors as opposed to the customers. And the choice that we made when we started Scribble is that first, let us figure out if there is any value for our offering to begin with. Money is there, right? There is plenty of money, and every day, like, there is more and more money that is flowing into the Indian ecosystem. The question is, is what you're doing worth your time, and will anybody pay some dollars for yours? And so that gets reflected in the way the product design happens, right? We were in this feature store business, the same data preparation business, slightly more fancier packaging is feature stores, right? Now, the way the structure of the Valley companies look very different from that of the Indian companies and from our company. And they were very curious. I remember this feature store conference where there was Netflix, there was Uber, there was like Disney, and there was Scribble next to it. And we were the outliers, right, in terms of what we were doing and how we are doing. And the difference can be explained by the fact that because we were a bootstrap company and we had to demonstrate value, we had to go full stack and deliver this end product to the customer. And what that does to you is that you start emphasizing the parts that the customer cares about most, which is the speed and the accuracy and trustability and all of these kinds of things. And they care a lot less about the scale of the data, for example. So in our product, we pretty much assume that we are going to only deal with data that is going to fit inside your machine's memory or something like that, right? So that means that a lot of PySpark is out of the window. It's serious simplification. Whereas PySpark was the flavor of the day, and everybody's the implementation was PySpark, and it adds enormous complexity. But our challenge was that, are we going to keep building the PySpark infrastructure, or are we going to deliver value? And anything that derived from the end user value was what we ended up doing. And therefore, our system was a lot more compact, a lot more simpler, emphasizing a lot more on auditability, accessibility, and these kinds of things, the richness of the data. We were not trying to build a fully robust system. What we were building for is recovery. So what we learned over a period of time is there will be bugs in all of these pipelines. These are complex transformation pipelines. You are going to make mistakes. Let's focus on ways by which we can recover as fast as possible. The moment there is an issue, I know where the issue is and I can go fix it. And I'm not going to use very complex CI/CD system, DevOps system, and so on, because all of them add to the cost of the recovery of the system once mistakes happen. And they happen very, very frequently because of the nature of the domain. So the frugality came from the fact that, of course, there was nobody to pay us. So we had to keep it absolutely simple. But more importantly, we wanted it to be very, very closely tied to the value, to the end customer. And that the lesson for us is that when value comes into the picture, the direction of the product is very different, right? Than if you start talking in terms of the best practice in the industry or what somebody else has done. And that requires a lot of courage of conviction. And in my opinion, building products that are long lasting means that you are going against the grain of whatever is the ideas of that particular time. Going back to even 1900, there needed to be people with contrarian ideas. Even in 2000, they required like 2024. That need does not change. So great products, in my opinion, building them require you to have original ideas, courage of conviction in your own ideas, and your ability to withstand all the resistance that you face along the way. And I love what Jensen Huang, of course, NVIDIA is very famous now and it's got all the limelight and so on. But he speaks from the heart. And I totally think of him as an inspirational character. And he has been contrarian for much, much longer than anybody could afford. And of course, he very openly says that this is not what I would recommend and so on. I know why, right? I remember all the condensation and all the slides that I was at the receiving end of. So 2-3 big things, right, underlying Scribble. The first one is we believe in rough consensus and running code. We don't think of tech as, although we are a tech company, tech is not an end in itself, right? So we want to have rough consensus about what we want to build, and we want to build it, and we want to build it really, really fast. That means keep it extremely simple. What is the absolute minimum artifact that you can build in order to prove or disprove certain ideas? And what we have found over a period of time is that we don't need a lot of technologies that people are talking about. So our products are built without PySpark, without microservices, without big databases, and so on. But what we are able to deliver as a result of that is high trust, high speed of development and deployment. All our products go into production within a month or 2 months. Like this is like even at a Fortune scale. And customers love that, because one of the big issues, which it's very, I mean, the signals were always there. The machine learning community was not paying attention. So there was this credit card company marketing head who was speaking to me, and he said that, look, from the point I discussed my use cases with the machine learning team, it was 7 months before they came back. And within 7 months, my life changed. Just the choice of bootstrapped versus fundraising, right? I think that it is, in all cases, whether it is bootstrapped or otherwise, it is, you have to first get clarity about what products you want to offer, for whom you want to offer. Now, the question is, how do you get that clarity? I think the availability of cash is definitely tempting, right? We all have EMIs to pay and life to and bills to pay and so on. But I think that we felt that the going through the difficult process of actually establishing the value propositions first is a good thing. And that took a lot of courage, because I went almost like, I mean, I ran out of cash, and my co-founder also had to sell off his car, and all the usual drama that is associated with startups. You have to have the stomach for going through all of it. But what ends up happening is that if you get money before your ideas are settled, you are under pressure to spend it, and you will misallocate those resources. And I see that everywhere, like in all directions. So my suggestion is, check in all cases, the goal should be to get clarity. What are you doing? Why are you doing? And why do you think that you can do that other folks can't do? And if it means to, if there is too much ambiguity, like it was in our case, you stay without the money. Money is not going anywhere. It's only increasing with every passing year. There is plenty of capital for good ideas, in my opinion. There's no need to have FOMO. The important thing is capital, once it is available, you should have a clear idea about how to deploy it and why you should deploy it in a certain way. Because today, the deployment in the global market that we can have disproportionate returns, right? Especially like I'm seeing that 3-5 years from now, you will have billion-dollar companies with only 3 or 5 people, right? If you correctly build the companies. So this is all inside, in my opinion, more than outside. But in all cases, most of our ideas are wrong. So you have to be prepared for the failures. Anybody who doesn't have failures and thinks that they can build companies, I don't believe that. That is, nature has a way of teaching you. Nature has a way of filtering. And I've seen this consistently over and over again. And so I would emphasize honesty. I would emphasize clarity. I would emphasize a sense of purpose, the determination, because that is what it will take to break into serious value propositions. If you think about our own Indian ecosystem, right? I think of it as in terms of 3 phases. The first phase was the fresh desk of the world. There was almost no infrastructure. They did the best that they could within that at that time, right? Some mix of consulting and product, and they did what could be sold at that time. Then there was the second phase of from about 2015 to 2020 or 2021, where we started building more technology heavy products, but this was mostly copying what TechCrunch did. If TechCrunch announced something, you could make a clone of it, like locally, right? I think that the opportunity today, at some level, given the access to information, access to knowledge, and also the markets and experienced investors and companies around, the folks can think about much deeper value propositions now. Most of the companies that are being built are, in my opinion, they are nibbling at the edges of the value proposition of most of these companies. Let's say ChargeBee, without taking away anything from what ChargeBee has been able to accomplish and so on. Let's say you remove ChargeBee from a customer. the customer will be able to find another ChargeBee-like company. Let's say you remove Pratt and Whitney from Boeing, the market will be shaken up, right? Because the depth of the value proposition is such that they are core to that ecosystem of that particular market. And the opportunity at some level for the entrepreneurs is that we have the resources now, we have some amount of experience. There is a need to go much deeper, think a lot harder about the value that they are delivering, and much deeply integrate with the customer, right? Become a logistics company and support the global logistics, or like become so in our case, for example, we are fully now invested in the insurance and asset management. We are not thinking about anything else. And we are already we already have actuaries on our roster, and we are on the way to becoming one of them, right? For what we realized over a period of time is that all great businesses form a web of relationships. If you look at Boeing, like I was giving an example, Boeing would talk to Pratt and Whitney. Pratt and Whitney would talk to other construction deployment companies. There would be maintenance MRO companies. There is a healthy ecosystem of specialists who all interoperate with each other, and they have an understanding. And everybody is talking to everybody else, because for Pratt and Whitney to do their job well, they need to understand what Boeing is doing and what every other stakeholder is doing, right? So I remember this story I read somewhere. About Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs had this when he was announcing one of those iPhone next versions of the iPhone. He wanted a better glass, so he went to Corning, the glass company, and he said, "I want glass with these and these properties." Corning heard that and said, "No, that chemistry does not support that. All our experience doesn't support that." At that time, Steve Jobs told them, "I have full confidence in Corning's own ability to master this new set of ideas and methods. You go off and build. I'll give you 6 months." And lo and behold, like 6 months later, Corning comes back with the glass, and they're amazed at what they were able to build. I think this stands out in my mind as an example of deep value propositions, right? Steve Jobs deeply respects Corning's own area of expertise, and both of them are in a long journey together, right? It is not a fleeting engagement, if you will. It is the Corning's work and their own smarts are absolutely essential to the journey that Steve Jobs wants to be on. So what I feel is that Indian companies need to understand this deep value game, and playing that game means that you have to be very serious. You can't PLG your way into these kinds of things. The Corning has to work really hard to build the trust of Steve Jobs or whoever, right? Be very good at what they do, and build out the kinds of the both the expertise, the connects, the resources to be able to do their job well. I think that the Indian ecosystem it's a mix of things, right? We live in a particular ecosystem. Our framing is of a certain kind. So if I look at our own Scribble journey, where we went from initially being bootstrapped, once we got some clarity saying that we want to build something like feature store and data products, that is when we raised the money. Now we are looking at a much deeper value proposition, where we are saying that we will do data products only for this particular vertical, and we are going to be deeply embedded in that vertical. We know everybody in the domain, and we want to be connected to everybody in the domain. We should be the first port of call when they have a problem, much like we want to be the Corning for the Steve Jobs of my target customer world, right? I think that one of the things that bothers me about the community is the flippancy, the tone which they talk about customers, right? They are just numbers in some product analytics sheet and so on. That is not how you build deep companies, in my opinion. You have to value your customers. You have to deeply understand their business, and you have to deeply integrate with your business. You have to have skin in the game, and if they lose, you lose, right? So there is the opportunity in 2024 is that now that heavy lifting has been done by the Freshdesk and the Charbis of the world, when it was like much difficult, we have the resources, we have the people, we are limited by our vision, ambition, and our strategy, in my opinion. And so if there is one message that I have for the peer entrepreneurs is that I think that the the limitations are primarily internal of our own self-imposed. And what we have found as Scribble in domain after domain, when we were at every point in time, we were not asking whether we have the right to play in a certain market. We just decided to be in the feature store market, and they were so shocked. The Valley folks were so shocked that I remember when we had also said that we are a feature store, many of them visited my profile just to see who is this company, like halfway across the world, claiming to be like a feature store. This permissionless innovation is something that you have to deeply internalize. The customer, in my opinion, is ready. The customer wants better experience. The customer is rational. They will be willing to engage you if you have a product. But you have to understand that particular market and play the market according to the rules, right? And Silicon Valley, I see Silicon Valley making a number of mistakes, which creates the opportunity for the entrepreneurs outside, in my opinion. One is that dramatic emphasis on scaling before the ideas are crystallized. And that is what led to this whole MLOps business. That is something that I think we can resist. We have like, simply because we are lesser cash, right? So you'll have to cope with that. So that is the first thought. The second thought is that this emphasis, the HubSpot, I think, led to a how do you put it? The customer in the minds of all of these a bunch of these companies is, it's like a game that they are playing, right? Whereas I think the opportunity for Indian companies is to take customers very seriously, their interests, their goals, their aspirations, and build, and they would be receptive to that, right? That's the second thing. The third thing I think is that the technology is creating a massive disruption in sector after sector after sector, and these are great times for entrepreneurs. And today you can have a much deeper impact with much smaller team. The quality of the talent pool has been a major concern for the past so much time, and it will take a generation. It's not going to go away. So what as Scribble, what we have found is that you can create sufficient value with very small team. If you apply all the learning that you have had, your own experience, and decide what is the most compact offering that you can have, that will have the right trade-offs, right? It is you can build great products with even 3 to 5 people. You don't need like armies of people. You don't need the Infosys of the people to make a impact on the world. So the opportunity is there. We have to overcome. A lot of us have come from the middle class, so it will take courage and conviction to overcome that and address the market. The market is there. I mean, I see opportunity in all directions, right? I see execution limitations. I don't see the market limitations.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I think we all have to imbibe that. Maybe a couple of points on where you see the landscape evolving in terms of, of course, we talked about real deep value sustainable products. But in this whole ecosystem, global, domestic, or if we think about it as a level playing field with large language models, right? And the infrastructure that is available today and what is being built and can be built, right? How do you see this evolving? What do you see are big opportunities, or where are most exciting things that customers, again, keeping them at the center, that you think customers will care about?
Absolutely. I think that first thing, the building of the large language models, what the server is doing and so on, that is the game of, it's an oligopoly game. High resources, high risk, high investment. That is not the long tail of what entrepreneurs are going to do. Entrepreneurs are going to focus on applications of this. I think the trick is to figure out where are the right places to use these large language models. And from all of our conversations primarily happen with large insurance carriers and financial institutions, right? I can tell you that they're looking at every single activity that they are doing, and they're asking, whether machine can help with that. The customer is opening up the entire roster of opportunities for companies, in my opinion. But they have serious considerations because they have large enterprise and this and that. The technology, a lot of the folks talk about what is going to happen in GPT-5 and GPT-6 and all of those kinds of things. Actually, I'm not that worried about it. A lot of productivity improvements can be accomplished using existing GPT 3.5 and 4. That is already like amazing capability at the table, and you can build a lot of products. So the trick is to figure out where is the demanding emanating from within the customer world. For example, even the insurance world that we deal with, not every line of insurance business is moving at the same pace. Some businesses are getting disrupted, other businesses are declining. So the attitude towards these technologies will be very different. But so in my mind, the opportunities are pretty much in every industry. Wherever white collar jobs and highly sophisticated, skilled individuals are doing, the mediocre middle is a major target. Anybody who is doing relatively rule-based systems, we were somewhat skeptical, right, about how much these LLMs can accomplish. What we are finding with every passing day is that we are able to find opportunities to automate and scale up every single activity that we are coming across. I'm not seeing anything that says that we cannot do, right? We cannot improve the productivity of. That is not happening. And that should be an indication. Even this is happening in 2023 and 2024. So my suggestion is, look at where the upheavals are happening, right? That creates the need and the desire in the enterprises to modify. And AI is top of mind of everybody, right? Because everybody is looking at coping with this world. And because technology is disrupting the economics, you have a seat at the table that wasn't there even 5 years back, right? In our industry, for example, there are a couple of players who have adopted, like Domino, one after the other, like is now adopting the AI technology. And 3 years from now, it will be a hyper productive line of business, and other lines of business will look at it and say, oh, like if they can do it, why can't I do it, right? That conversation is already started at some level. So, but in all cases, in order to make AI work, you need to deeply understand the domain. So first thing is, I would go with what is it that you're most familiar with, right? As a domain, it could be logistics, education, healthcare, and so on. Second, the more boring and uninteresting the jobs, I have a sense that there will be higher value there, right? Because the most interesting jobs have many other people who are at the table who are contending for that same piece of pie, and what everybody wants to get rid of is stuff that is dirty, boring, uninteresting, and so on. It may actually turn out that may be some of the most interesting problems to solve, right? Something that other people don't care about. So this requires us to drop our ego and go after problems with an open mind, right? When even today people look at it and you're going after insurance, right? And so on. We found that these are like, I mean, it's a pleasure to work with some of the customers that we have, because they're really smart. They're thinking about all of these things. They just are carrying a lot of responsibility. So their behavior is completely rational, right? So understand them, meet them where they are, And in sector after sector, this is happening, in my opinion, because we get glimpses into, because of the scale of some of our customers, we get glimpses into the conversations that they are having across the industry and across industries as well. And we know that the AI train has left the station. The valley, so many of the first set of experiments are failing, almost 95% failure, partly because they are expecting magic from LLMs. I think realism is setting in right now. So we should see more success stories later this year. So when companies like Scribble and we are able to convince our insurance customers that LLMs work and work in a way that is appropriate to their domain. And that is because we are approaching with a lot of humility. We are very narrowly targeting and playing to the strengths of the LLM and coping with wherever is the limitations of the LLM with good software and experience design, right? Solve the problem, right? Don't expect magic from LLMs, and that is so. This in domain after domain, this is going to happen. So now is the time, in my opinion.
Any other unique advantages of building from India? Of course, you did mention that we are away from a little bit of that, fair bit of that noise that is Silicon Valley in some sense. But other advantages, I'm picking one that is one advantage, or you can use it to your benefit by being focused on the customer. The other one is
very
possibly
interestingly,
frugality, because
yes,
we don't have so much capital. By default, we have to be frugal. But capital is also increasing. Anything else that comes to mind that Indian entrepreneurs have an edge, from our past experiences or anything closer to our ecosystem?
I think two things come to my mind, right? Our culture that is there, the encourages a lot of respect for we call it Atithi Devo Bhava, right? We have traditionally looked down upon business, especially like the Brahmins and so on. I was told that this is not what you do. Like you're in the service of knowledge and all of this. But the deep inside the culture is I think the first thing that comes very naturally is humility and respect for the other people. And I'm amazed at how many customers want that. They want to be treated well, right? You'll be amazed. Like, why would a fairly rich, large organization have this problem? Right? I think what has happened is that the engineering community has played roughshod with the customers. So this is of value, and this will come, I think, very naturally to us simply because of the culture, right? The second thing that I see is I go back to the motto of my institute, right? Jnanam Paramam Deyam. I also feel that when we are able to balance the need to pursue business with knowledge, that would be a great thing. Because I mean, again, I see a lot of extractive relationships in the marketplace, which I think is not necessarily a good thing. And sometimes we are able to give honest advice because we believe that Jnanam is Paramam Dheyam, right? So I would draw upon strengths from our culture more than anything else. Pursue knowledge for its own sake. Do the right thing for your customers, and treat them with deep respect. And I think technical jobs, pretty much in every organization that I'm seeing, all the executives are all desis everywhere. I don't think it is the DNA or anything like that. There are deep structural constraints in the Indian ecosystem, in my opinion. The first one in my is that the last few years, because jobs were very easy, people stopped valuing excellence, in my opinion, right? And because I hire the kinds of the attitude that I face from the folks is not healthy. Okay, that is the first one. The second serious structural limitation in the ecosystem is that we haven't built enough companies to see the life cycle and to actually understand what it means to build these. So from my investor side, my recommendation is that you are not going to be able to copy the Silicon Valley playbook, right? That isn't happening. You have the only way to learn how to build companies is to build companies, and that means that, and it's going to be a grind because you haven't done it before, right? Here the investors and the entrepreneurs have to be deep partners, in my opinion, where there is continuous knowledge exchange to figure out what are these deep companies made of, how do you actually build these deep companies, how do you sustain them, and so on. So some of the conversations with investors are also very, very flippant. It shows me the lack of depth, in my opinion. That is the reflection of where we are in our ecosystem journey, right? So this will go away with every passing day as more companies like us we are able to build, share our experience, also absorb the capital and learn from it, and so on. The third thing I would say is integrity. You are going to, Indian ecosystem will completely screw up this opportunity if it does not have, if it has people who are playing fast and loose with money, customers, data. This is strictly not okay. You can't, you are going to screw up that entire ecosystem, in my opinion. So anybody, I would rather have fewer companies that have strong structure and integrity than have a large number of companies which are just messing up for everybody.
No, great points there for all of us to take as we, try to be part of this ecosystem and try to get the ecosystem to the next level, right? I want to be cognizant of time and,
Yeah.
Say, I think you've covered really wide gamut and really fascinating to understand your motivations and, the drive, and most importantly, the approach, which, like you've said multiple times, is contrarian. And hope this helps a lot of other people to think through how they're building and be comfortable in being contrarian. It's not easy in a FOMO driven world and a ecosystem which has multiple influences, right? But I think by seeing that companies are being built that way, right, and people are taking that path like yourself, I think hopefully other people can also take the same. Maybe a last note to shout out and say, hey, what are you looking for at Scribble? You're building some smart systems, you're looking for good people. Maybe people in the audience can respond to that. How can they reach out to you? How can they learn more about
Absolutely.
you as well as what Scribble Data is doing? A shout out from your side
Thanks
will be
for the opportunity. A small company, definitely for us, it's a great thing to have this opportunity to reach a large number of folks. We are doing some very interesting work in regulated financial services in the US. So if you're interested in AI agents, AI assistants for financial services, of the future, you should talk to us. We are a very friendly bunch, but we are not looking for 10x engineers. We are looking for people with the right mix of capability, attitude, and so on, which I think a fair number of you have. Please reach out. LinkedIn probably is a good way. Otherwise, my email address is also my last name at scribbledata.io. Please reach out. And even if you don't have anything to do with Scribble, I'm more than happy to share our learnings in this direction and help you build great companies and great careers.
Thank you, Venkat. That's very generous of you. Like always, we've always enjoyed conversations with you, and you've always been helpful and candid with your thoughts. We'll, at Speciale, we'll be rooting for Scribble. We may not be technically investors and partners, but we're in the ecosystem and we wish you well. Thank you for today's time and insights most importantly, really deep, really well thought out. Lots to ponder upon for the audience. And thank you so much once again.
Thank you to Special Invest. Thank you, Shubhankrita, and you and everybody else at Special. And you guys are doing great work. And I think it's my pleasure to engage you rather than the other way. So
I know,
you're
much
taking even
appreciated.
bolder bets than we are doing. So
No, we can only bet on the entrepreneurs that are around. So thank you so much.
thank
It's
you.
amazing. With that, we'll be signing off on another amazing episode of Speciale Talks. All right, so much to chew upon. We will put some show notes out along with the recording on multiple platforms for everybody to digest and use and for future reference. Until next time, take care and goodbye.
Thank you.